Welcome, everybody. We got another edition of the MAT Practitioner Spotlight. And today we have Skip Chapman from outside Chicago, or I guess inside Chicago, the heart of Chicago. And Skip's been around the program for years. He got his MAT certification in 2005, worked on for master's level at 2014. And right around the COVID time, he finished up his RX practitioner certification as specialist in 2020. So obviously a thorough degree of education through the process. And Skip, first off, welcome, Skip. Thanks for
thank you very much.
Yeah,
pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And it's been great having you around all these years. And then first off, I know you have a little extensive background in the health and fitness industry, management of gyms, and just tying MAT together with everything that you've done. If you want to kind of go about, explain kind of where you were, and first off, what got you to MAT, and then kind of lead into how it's impacted what you're doing and your career at this point in time.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting. I tell this story a lot, but actually, when I first heard about MAT, it was from a well-known physical therapist who you both know. And this guy Tom did lectures all around the world, all around the country, and he was making a Chicago stop. And there's a group of us that will always go out to dinner with him. And he was going on and on about MAT. And, Tom has this extensive knowledge of biomechanics, but he's always had this lingering back problems. And he was telling me about this guy named Greg Roskopf that helped him. And he started classes in MAT. Well, at that time, I was training. I was training basketball, NBA players, NHL players. And that's what I was doing at that point. And so I wasn't, I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't really interested at the time, but I kept hearing about it. So another guy who I worked with, Mike, there was one spot open in the class in Colorado, and he went to it. And when he came back, he goes, "That was the best thing I've ever did." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's great. That's good. I'll keep doing what I'm doing and whatever." So of course, with training, sometimes athletes get tweaks here and there, and then so I said, "Well, why don't you try this?" My buddies just went through this great program. It's called Muscle Activation Techniques. And so I would send them over there, and then they would come back after getting the treatment and say, "Skip, I don't know what he did, but it's gone." Usually this is like, I'm out for like 3-4 weeks, but it's gone. I'm like, okay. So that happened over and over, so I was thinking, okay, what is this thing? And at that time, you were only on VHS cassette. Yeah, so they were talking way back there. So you were doing muscle testing. I'm like, okay, all right. So I kept sending clients to Mike, and then sending them to Ed, who went through the next practitioner. And then when people kept coming back saying, these treatments are awesome, this is way better than PT and all this, then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to do this. So I actually changed my whole background on what I do. I was going from training regular people, but I was training a lot of athletes at the time. And after I got treated a few times, and I just put my body through a host of injuries between martial arts and playing sports way further down the line than I should have. And after I got treated and I got off the table, I was feeling the same way. So that's when I really knew I had to know this. And I knew this was going to be the future. And so that's when I changed it. And I was right as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
So definitely.
That's great. And the nice thing, about that is like you're able to send people that were injured or just having issues and being able to get the experience. And obviously, that practical experience is the key. We can talk about MAT forever, and
oh my God,
it can make sense, but until you really experience it, you never really know how significant or how profound the impact can be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, so you got the first one 2005, so you were obviously in early and started teaching it in like 2000, 2001, and it's evolved. I mean, I think obviously you know that. I mean, there wasn't even a I didn't even know what I was doing at master level. I was just trying to refine people's skills at the time, but then there became a really significant change with the master level, and then the RX level. I mean, who would have ever thought that the program where it was back then having so much success would evolve into the levels that have come from it and all the way to the RX process now. And you've been, obviously what we talked about, you've gone through that. So can you explain that evolution and how that evolved for you and what it's impacted your career?
Oh, wow. It's been amazing. So when you go through this, first I did the jump start. So that's the beginning, doing isometrics and finding limited range of motions, and took that, and then just to get a basis of understanding what we are doing, and then went through the specialist program and got certified in 2005, and that's when you start changing lives, actually, and going through the specialist program I thought was pretty significant.
Right.
And then to really get a little bit more proficient, you have to show your expertise by getting your mastery, and you're moving up. So you're learning details on the muscle testing and range of motion. And the RX is just, that's you're at the epitome at that point, because that's when you really, really start changing lives. And when I learned the RX process, you go through it and you think, man, I wish I had some people you had before, you wish you had back and forth the RX process. Because I get a little bit of everybody. The athletes I get in, they're pretty easy to do because they're high performance people, right?
Right.
But I also get a lot of people in their 80s, and I have quite a few people, believe it or not, in their 90s. And I have people in their 80s. There's a video I put on my Instagram about one of my guys. He's 83 now. So this was last year or 2 years ago. He went through total knee, and now he plays tennis 3 times a week.
Right.
And there's video of him post a year and a half post knee rehab. You should check it out. Sprinting.
Oh, really?
Sprinting down our turf.
Huh.
And that's the RX process. And it's you're really talking at a high level and just learning the really big details on how the body functions, and that's what you get from.
Yeah, and that's the neat part too, is I can always talk, and regardless of whether you're geriatric, pediatric, coordinated, uncoordinated, athletic, non-athletic, the nice thing is the foundational principles are the same. And if we ever say who's MAT for, it's anyone with a muscular system, because life's going to beat us up, and from a neuromuscular standpoint. Somebody's got to be there to put you back together, and that's really what we're here for. Is all the aches and pains that we relate to aging. It's like having to do with failure of the muscle system to tolerate forces, and that's probably the key when you talk about athletes. You're talking about the athletes that, I always say you can do anything wrong with athletes and still have success with athletes. But it's an 80-year-old person you're talking about that had knee replacements, and you're dealing with different issues that the integrity of the neuromuscular system is nowhere close to what it was when he was 20 years old and maybe athletic. And so in that standpoint, what would you say would your, if you had a story, everyone has stories with MAT. Do you have something that sits in your brain that is like, man, that was somebody that just had, validated everything I do with MAT?
Yeah, like I said, over the years, there's been a lot of tons of stories. Probably I'll give you a recent one, fairly recent. So my eye doctor, who her office is 45 minutes away from downtown, which that's where I'm at. And she was experiencing, nerve pain going down her neck and shoulder, and sometimes they'll reach down her to her buttock. So she was getting some kind of a pinch syndrome going on. So she went to 3 different doctors. One of them I knew. So and this guy was really good orthopedic surgeon, and and those 3 different doctors all said the same thing. They needed to fuse 3 levels in the cervical. And so, it was real. And she wasn't ready for that. She knew she had to do it, but she wanted to try everything. So she actually forgot what I did. And so she happened to run across somebody that knows me, and she goes, "Why don't you give Skip a try? You could try anything." She goes, "I totally forgot about Skip. I should see Skip," because she had seen me previously about 4 or 5 years prior. So she came in and she goes, "Okay, Skip, I'm 3 weeks out from my surgery for October 10th. And I don't expect you to be able to do anything, but I'm willing to try just to make sure." So I said, "Okay, I can't promise you anything, but let's try out." So I put her through the RX process, and so we went through the different levels on that. And and let me back up a little bit. It was to the point where she would come in here, and in the first couple of sessions, she was in so much pain. And it's usually from the 45-minute drive to work and back, and just having her arms in this position and being seated, she'd be almost in tears. Well, we were 3 days out from surgery, and she had 0 pain. Right. 3 days out, 0 pain. She went from having that pain for months, 3 different doctors telling her, yeah. And she even went back for a second opinion on one of the doctors she was going to do. And so now we are at 8 months or 9 months, 8 or 9 months. Yeah, 8 or 9 months, and with no pain. And by that time, we've gone all the way through the foot. And every time I check her, she comes in for checkups, and she is rock solid. Rock solid. Then she started complaining about, well, my toe is bothering me a little bit here when I run. So she's running now.
Running.
And so we just went through the foot, and that's fine. So every time I test her, it's unbelievable how she's solid through each pattern. It's awesome.
Yeah, and that's great. And when you're dealing with, cervical, spinal fusions, things like that, it's like, you think that's the death of you. Like when people have surgeries, and especially things that degree with disectomies and fusion, it's like, that can be, if not already the downward spiral, the beginning of a downward spiral. Yeah. Now you're saying this woman's running. Who would think after that she'd be running again?
Yeah, so that's one of many stories, but that is the most recent one that you really feel good about. And that's the one that when people tell you that, you changed my life, how good you feel, because that's why I got in this game, was, when you get into any kind of PT or fitness, whatever, you're there to try to change someone's life. So MAT is definitely changing people's lives on a daily basis. And when someone tells you, you changed my life, you go home, you're on cloud 9. And it's especially she has to take care of my eyes. So, got to get her going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And did she help your golf game at all?
What I have to do is save her pro. I have to save her pro, get some lessons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the eyes aren't.
I'm coming. Watch out! I'm coming.
Yeah, the eyes aren't going to do it. Yeah. That's the other thing is, we work with athletes. Like you said, you started your whole career working with athletes, and you can have a lot of success with athletes, but when you're changing somebody's quality of life, that's a whole. No, obviously we are working with athletes, and they get to go on and perform at a high level, which is a great thing. But when you're changing quality of life, where it's like they can't even function and don't have a light at the end of the tunnel from a day-to-day activity standpoint, and then all of a sudden, like you said, this woman's running and living normal life now. That's, I mean, it can be much more rewarding because you are changing their quality of life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. It's the best thing I did. Definitely going to, I didn't realize how good it was going to be at the time. I knew it was pretty significant. Starting with even with the jump start. And I was still, and as I'll fess up to this, even when we went through the jump start and you start on lower body, I was still kind of like, okay, does this really work? So I had a quick story. So this is back in 2003 or something like that, and this is through the jump start. And I had a client who's at the time was an attorney, still practicing. He was in his upper 60s, and I've had him as a client for 4 or 5 years at that point. And after we finished our workout, we go, okay, let's do some PNF at the end, because he was super tight. And we started at the same point. I say, okay, lift your leg up, let me see what you can get. And they'll start out with hip flexion at 45 degrees. And here I am doing PNF on them, and we probably get 5 more degrees doing PNF. And so after I did my jump start lower body, I said, okay, Clive, we're going to see if this really works. I know how tight you are. And so we started doing that. I said, lift up your leg, and we just started doing isometrics and certain range of motion. And I would say probably 3 weeks, probably just doing the same, because I saw him twice a week. By 3 weeks, I didn't have him doing it. So it was just seeing me. I said, okay, Clive, let me see what your range of motion. He would start at 90 degrees. So for 5 years, 5 years, he started at 45 and get 5 more degrees. 3 weeks, 90 degrees. I'm like, okay. And I tell that storyline. That's kind of like, okay, is something definitely here. And that's one of the reasons why I went on to the specialist program.
Mm-hmm. And that's the neat part too, is that you were doing the jumpstart level, and the foundational principles of MAT are really, I mean, everything's based off of that all the way to the RX level. Is that wherever you see a limitation in range of motion, it means that the muscles that move you there, unless there's some orthopedic change or the bone spurs or something like that are blocking motion that the structure dictates, should occur. If the movement doesn't occur, it's because the muscles that move you there aren't contracting efficiently. And those foundational principles is wherever you see a limitation in range of motion, means that one or more of the muscles that cross that axis are potentially weak, and you have the tools to be able to assess it. And sometimes it seems too easy. Like, okay, that person you were stretching them and doing PNF work for 5 years, and then all immediately you see a drastic change in his range of motion by doing at that point at the jumpstart level isometric contractions into that shortened range. And I mean, that's the neat part, is that's the jumpstart level. And then, I mean, when you work as a practitioner, working with clients at the MAT level, had success, at the mastery level, have more success, and at the RX level, even have more success, because people, you start being a referral base for everybody. Now all of a sudden, it's not just the athletes, it's the most screwed up people out there. And
oh my gosh,
and sometimes it's not just as straightforward as we would hope, and we're just straightforward biomechanical principles. But that point, you add immune system and a nervous system to a muscular system, it can change everything we know about biomechanics, because things don't happen the way we would hope when you got, say, chronic or systemic inflammation with your clients. So
absolutely, the stress on that is another part to it. So absolutely.
And that's the key, is the athletes typically aren't inflamed, and they're not, I mean, they may sprain an ankle, so now those muscles that support the ankle are inflamed, but the systemic inflammation that relates to disease, and I mean, in aging, where I said all the aches and pains that relate to aging have to do with failure of the muscle system. It's like when you have systemic inflammation and no muscles in the body can tolerate forces, it's like it's much more complex than, I sprained my ankle, and with an MAT standpoint with an athlete, you just get those muscles activated and they can walk better. And
absolutely.
So
absolutely.
in reality,
what is great Yeah, what was great is when I have a client who's a spinal surgeon. He's one of the top spinal surgeons here in the Chicago area, and those are the toughest people, right? So as you know, but he's a big golfer. He is a very low handicapper, and when you take them through the process of it, you're always going to get skepticism through that, even if you show the process that is different with them right away, like what you see with MAT. And but what made the difference was he golfs with these same guys all the time. And then we went through the process for the first time, and now he's out driving. He comes back and says, "I drove my friends by 40 yards."
Yeah.
After we did that process.
Yeah.
and now, now that's when people have a visual what's going on, whatever their goals are. That's in that respect makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean, I always say that you can't make a bad golfer a good golfer. But if somebody has the skill to improve their muscular system or their muscle capabilities, then a good golfer becomes a better golfer. They start utilizing the muscles that they have and contracting more efficiently. They start driving the ball farther and improving their game. But you can't make a bad golfer a good golfer. I know that firsthand.
Yeah, I think I do more than you.
But
see if I can change that coming up.
There's potential. Yeah.
There's always potential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Skip, any other, like with your business and everything that you've done, I mean, working with, fellow employees and kind of the way it's worked, more than just you as an individual, have you seen it, work as a unit in a business structure?
Yeah, well, we had a lot of people come out of this particular. My office is at Fitness Formula Clubs in Chicago, is in the Gold Coast, and we had a lot of MAT practitioners come out of this spot. This is kind of it's almost like the mecca of MAT people that come in from like Charlie Cage, Scott McWilliam, Brian Eccles, exactly. Eddie. Mike, there's so many people that came out of this area, and all those practitioners are very successful in what they do, and they still practice it now. Whether they open up their own businesses and changing lives that way, and we all still keep in contact. It's good to see them when you haven't seen somebody in a while. And it's good to have the same stories and sharing stories and having somebody to. Part of the great thing about here is not every practitioner has the same thing. Is we have someone to feed off of each other. We actually have two practitioners here now at work at the same club I'm at, Jessica Thiel and Jeremy Gordon, and their RX. Now they just finished recently, and and they're killing it. They're killing it. Yeah. So it's great. It's good.
That's great. And it's, obviously, in the big picture, we want to have it everywhere. There should be I always believe there should be somebody doing MAT on every corner of every city of every state and every country. And Chicago's got huge representation, though. Over the years, we've trained a lot of people in Chicago, so I know it's made its mark in Chicago. Yeah. And a lot of you practitioners there have had a lot of success with the process, and that's been great. And able to build businesses and have a career doing it. And that's been awesome. Yeah,
absolutely. I do I think twice a year, and yesterday was one of it, just introducing MAT to people, because people are come in, that's always referral. So they come in, I never heard of this. My friend told me to come see you, and that's so I really try to push it and to show people what MAT is. So I do like a quick assessment, and there's a talk afterwards. So I do this all day is like assessments, 20 minutes to a half an hour, and just introduce the MAT, and people were just like, wow, I had no idea. And it's all ages at that group. It doesn't matter because we have a lot of young people as well as people. We have a cardiac rehab here from Northwestern. And so I get a little bit of everybody. And it doesn't matter whether if you're trying to get gains and strength, or people have shoulder problems, or people just want to just be able to walk 4 blocks here without stopping.
Right.
So it's the whole gamut here. So by introducing that to people and find out what could be the possibilities, whatever your goals are, is pretty important. And that's what brings it to light here.
Well, that's great. And on the final note, anything, if somebody's watching this and they're thinking about doing MAT or wanting to learn the information, is there any recommendations you have, or any words of advice for somebody that's considering to learn the process?
Yeah, it doesn't matter where you are in your life. As far as I'll just talk about the training aspect because that's where I came from. If you want to learn more about the human body, which I think is your job to do because you have people's health in your hands, and your success in your career, it's about knowing as much as you can to help out the person you're trying to help, and you're actually the bridge between the fitness and the health of your client. And going in this realm of health and fitness is where you want to be, especially in your future. You could be young right now and doing training and doing kettlebells, whatever you're good at, but eventually you want to be here. And that was the best thing I've ever done, and it definitely shows. And the trainers have come out of here, same situation. Everybody says the same thing. It's the best thing I did. It's the best thing I did. People don't leave MAT because it's terrible. I'm just going to live MAT. Leave MAT. You just don't hear that. People are in it, and people are in it for the long haul. So that's where
you're one of the many that's proof. I mean, when we say 2005 and then master level 2014 and then 2020 RX, I mean, that's many years of education and to enhance your career. But obviously that's a nice part. We got to believe it's worth it, or you wouldn't come back.
Absolutely. And it feels like it's only been 5 years because it really does, because everything you learn so much more each time continuing education. You learn so much more, and then definitely you see the results right away and improving your client that's on the table. And it's just automatic. You're like, oh, okay, got it. And so it really doesn't seem like 15, 16 years or how long I've been doing it. It really seems like it's been a short. Never get tired of it.
Well, that's great. Well, Skip, thanks for taking the time to
share
your experiences.
Thank you.
Great having you on board. All right.
I'll see you in September.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, my man.
Thanks.
All right.
See you.
All right. Talk to you. Ciao.
All right. Take care.